Hi, thanks for checking in on Dimgaard again this week. A couple of weeks ago, I recorded the Monday night session, the live in-person game that we run on Mondays at my house. And then whenever I was looking through that, several things jumped out at me that I'm going to be addressing in Dan on D&D over the next weeks. And one of the things that I realized pretty quickly was that if you were coming into Dimgaard unaware, like uninformed, you very likely thought, man, that is really, really deadly. I mean, over the course of that 3-hour session, we had, I think every PC was unconscious. And we had 2 actual PC deaths, and the Drake Warden's dragon was killed twice. And so that's a lot of dying in D&D 5th edition compared to other campaigns. I understand that, and I think that is deserving of a topic. So here I am to go into that. From its inception back in 2nd edition, Dimgaard has been deadly. That has always been the case. The driving principle behind that is that Dimgaard is designed to be heroic, to be like the topics of the adventures are like fundamental saving the universe, or at least saving the kingdom type things. There's never been a Dimgaard adventure where some wizard needs you to go gather up these mundane components, and these are the obstacles along the way, right? Like that's never been the case. Like at first level, you are engaging on a heroic journey, and just like in great works of fantasy fiction, those PCs start out at first level and are facing these cosmic forces that seems like it's impossible to overcome. We do that in Dimgaard at first level as well. We are designed to be a heroic campaign, and so that then means, that implies that every episode we are in a deadly struggle, in a save the universe situation against these massive forces that are trying to kill us. And inevitably, when you are telling that story, when you're building that story, you're going to drift over on the wrong side of that knife's edge, right? When you're walking the knife's edge between death and victory, you're not always going to end up on the right side of that knife's edge. So implicit from the beginning of Dimgaard, back whenever I first created it in 2nd edition, because I wanted to build a heroic storyline with that was much more of a collaborative story building adventure than the stuff I was seeing, which were very much railroad game piece type stories. So that's just a fact, right? So we're going to end up with a lot more death in Dimgaard than you have in other campaigns, and so then the question then becomes, okay, if that's just sort of a necessary element to deal with, how do we deal with it? Because we do want the PCs to be the heroes. We do want them to be victorious in the end. Like it's not a good story if the end of the story is and the universe was destroyed, right? And you like the always and in every case, we want the end of that story to be, and the heroes save the universe, right? So and so in 5th edition, we have some pretty built-in mechanisms to deal with that. Like the really the go-to one, though, the one we rely on by far the most, is Revivify. And Revivify is costly. It's 300 gold pieces worth of diamonds and whack. But what else are you going to use gold for in 5th edition? And in Dimgaard, we don't really track the specific gold piece value of stuff. We just sort of like in this particular adventure, in the end, you end up with a bunch of crystals and you say, okay, yeah, there's enough there for a couple of Revivifies. Or no, I think there was enough there for 4 Revivifies at the end of when if you eliminated the Topaz Dragon Wormling and had access to the gems that he had been collecting. So we use Revivify a lot, and then that then brings up the point of, well, yeah, Revivify is a 3rd level spell. What do you do until 5th level? Right? Or what do you do if no one is playing a character who can cast Revivify? And so we have in Dimgaard mechanisms that give PCs access to scrolls of Revivify at lower levels, which they can still activate even if they can't cast it yet. If it's on their spell list, it's a DC 13 spell casting level check, and that again is a pretty nifty situation. Like it really is. If you're looking for, like, okay, how do I expand the impact and importance of skill checks? Well, there you go, right? Like say, okay, we're going to make this. This is a deadly campaign. We're going to make this spell scrolls of Revivify available to you. But hey, you got to get there within a minute, and that 2nd level artificer or that 2nd level cleric has got to be able to make that DC 13 caster level check or caster ability check. And so then, you end up with things that usually are not that important, like guidance or bardic inspiration outside of combat, right? Those become really, really important. And then the ability to gain advantage on ability checks outside of combat. So things like inspiration. Man, those become really important, right? So, and then it gives you a whole focus, a whole new focus of downtime activities is to acquire those spell scrolls, right? Like, okay, how is my 2nd level cleric going to get access to that spell scroll of Revivify? And you're like, okay, yeah, you can spend, construct a scenario where he is spending a week of downtime, so that someone who has that 3rd level spell scroll is going to bestow it to him, at least for the use of emergencies until he gets to 5th level. And so now you have a whole new range of downtime activities that go into character building and story development and world building as well. And then the real thing that because for the first, I don't know how many months, maybe the first year of Dimgaard, it was still a struggle. And then my good friend John Wood, who is very much he's a great player. I don't know what it's supposed to say. He just knows stuff and finds stuff, and he in 5th edition he said, hey, have you seen these supernatural gifts that are a different that are a option under awarding treasure. And it's like, no. And he says, yeah, you ought to take a look at that. And so there you go. So there are supernatural gifts you can be awarded as a charm. So now in like almost every Dimgaard adventure, particularly in the low tier, in the first through fourth tier chapter there are going to be encounters, and they're presented as random encounters, but the DM can just deliberately select them to make a charm of Revivify available to the party, so that you know that there's going to be a PC or maybe two who's going to be able to cast Revivify at those low levels. And you don't want to make it an unlimited resource. You don't want it to be something that because then death becomes trivial. Then death has no impact on the PCs. Then it's like an MMO. It's like, oh, I died, I'll just respawn and jump back in. So yeah. And so even with all of that, I will say that many players that have tried out Dimgaard, the mortality, the lethality was just not enjoyable to them, right? Like there is maybe even most of the population of players who play 5th edition, what they're looking for is they're looking for they're like, I'm building a freaking deity here, man. I want to build this awesome, overpowering force that is unstoppable and is just going to just plow through everything. And I get that. Like their life is hard, and we face mortality and Herculean challenges every single day we live in. I completely understand how someone says, yeah, that's not what I want for my hobby. That's not, I don't want to sit down for my Tuesday night D&D game for 3 hours and just have that as a different form of overwhelming challenge. I don't want that. I want it to be an escape where I am the unstoppable superhero who's out there just blowing away the bad guys and saving the day with in just a manic whirlwind of devastation and overpowering. Yeah, I get that. And that is a valid way to play D&D. It's not my way to play D&D. It's not the Dimgaard way to play D&D. But there's a lot of campaigns that cater to that, and it's just a fact that is what a lot of players are looking for, and I don't begrudge those players or the campaigns that are built with that in mind. I even participate in some of those campaigns and enjoy them. Right? I'm not saying it's not fun to know going into an Adventure League session that, yeah, there's no one who's going to die here, right? Like I sat down at an Adventure League table, and I know everyone's, because I'm there at least. There's no one who's going to have a permanent death come out of that adventure. It's just in 6 years of Adventure League play, I've never had a character die for longer than a minute in game. And I've never been at a table where a character died permanently. There was not so not just a party member. So and I enjoy Adventure League. I play Adventure League a lot. Enjoy it a lot. It's not the game I would design. It's clearly not Dimgaard, but it's a very popular and justifiably popular game. So there are players who try out Dimgaard, say, yeah, it's just too lethal. I don't like the fact that whenever I come into a Dimgaard session that I have to account for the probability that I'm going to be at 0 hit points at some point in that session. And then they leave. They don't. But I will also observe that the players who play Dimgaard in the long term, I think, have a higher degree of satisfaction from Dungeons and Dragons than typical players. They play longer, they play more often, they are more enthusiastic about playing. Now that could be a self-selecting set, right? It could be that you know, the players who already have those qualities that I am engaging with end up playing Dimgaard, and if I was in a different environment, that those players would be playing some other version of D&D instead of Dimgaard. It just so happens that that's what I present to them, and so that's what they are thoroughly enjoying. So, and then it could be just that I'm biased too. Like, you know, Dimgaard's my campaign, and so, you know, it could be that I just have a confirmation bias built in there. Biases are a heck of a thing, right? Like by its nature, it's nearly impossible to recognize your own bias. Anyway, so yeah, if you watch that first that session from last Monday, and it's your first time looking at Dimgaard, you're very likely to come away and say, "Oh my God, that's very, very deadly." And so I hope that this video explains why that is, and that you don't have a negative opinion of that facet. And you know, I could be wrong about things. Like I said, you know, biases are a heck of a thing. If I am, I rely upon people to point out the fact that I'm wrong, and try to be as open and encouraging of that as possible. So, you know, if I'm wrong about it, maybe, you know, maybe I'm wrong. And you're thinking, no, here are the reasons why D&D should not be deadly. Here's the reasons that you're completely off base when you say that it's okay to make Dimgaard that deadly. If you have a reason for that, if you have a rationale for why my opinion is invalid, I definitely want to hear that. I will post with this video the ways to communicate with me on Facebook, Twitter, and email. There are comments available here too. And then, you know, I could be wrong about going the other direction too. Maybe I'm giving the superhero players too easy an out there. Maybe you have an explanation, a rationale for why that. Yeah, no, those guys are all wrong, and superhero campaigns are not a good way to play D&D, and here's why. I'm interested in hearing that too, because, you know, I do try to be fair, and in that particular case, I do think that it is a valid way to play D&D, just not my way to play D&D in general. And if you think these videos are helpful, please hit a like button there. It does help the videos to get seen by more people. I come out with them every week, so if you subscribe, you'll be sure not to miss any of them. And until next week, I thank you for tuning in.